Okay. Thank you very much for being here today. My name is Frederick Njau. I work for Heinrich Böll Foundation. Heinrich Böll Foundation is a German foundation. I'm here today because I was involved in the journey since the start of Decolonize. I was one among the very few people, both as an activist and also as a partner organization that started Decolonize. In terms of funding also, and in terms of also in solidarity. We did this because we believe in an environment that is clean, human rights also are respected, and because we are very much against utilization of fossil fuel. Decolonize as a movement is a big organization if you look at the membership, and also if you look at the following of different people who have been following Decolonize, also the activists who have been involved. And I'm here today because I want to be a witness of this journey, see the documentary, some of the challenges that we have gone through, and more importantly, the gains and also the wins that we have seen during this journey. It has been a great journey since 2016, 2017, when we started, until now. And we can say the milestone of it was in 2019, after the ruling of the tribunal to stop the coal power plant. And I would say that was a big win for me and also for the foundation as well. Sorry?
The last summary of how to expect later, what to expect out of this movie, what message is it out now?
Okay. The message that we expect. From this documentary, I think it's a documentary of hope, and to see that, you know, people, when they come together to fight for a certain cause, they can achieve great results. And to see also the communities that have been involved and where these projects are implemented. Sometimes they need a bit of a push, and also they need a bit of support to achieve some of the, you know, to fight big companies or big institutions that are implementing some of the projects that may affect either their land, they have impact on their livelihood, they have impact on their environment. So this documentary gives hope. This documentary shows some of the gains, some of the wins that you know, you can get if you support communities and if civil societies come together. Thank you.
Very much, Doreen. I would also like to acknowledge John Lucas, the Communications Director with the Decolonize Movement. He's back there. Thank you so much, John Lucas. And without further ado, we shall begin with the screening. Kindly, I hope you all remember the rules. No shoes, no phones, no food. Thank you very much.
Because of sustaining the campaign through the support of human rights defenders, Also, this is going beyond where we were focusing. So we have to do a lot, and also we have to implement the strategy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And perhaps, Mark, you could share more on the solutions, especially from the political and policy aspects.
So I think that's a really good question, because oftentimes we're accused of always being naysayers but without arguing for alternatives. So that's a really good question. I think first I would in a way throw it back to all of us, because I think when we leave coal aside, this is something that affects all of us, and particularly in the most marginalized areas, but all of us in terms of the cost of energy, because that's something I think everyone experiences on a daily basis. So one question is, do we understand and are we familiar with what goes into that energy pricing, and how these decisions that are made in terms of projects and investment translate into those high costs? In terms of civil society, I think there's a bit of a role there, and maybe working in collaboration with academia and researchers to try and break that information down in ways that I think are more digestible and understandable. It's something that even I struggle with, because it's not that this information isn't there. Some of it is there. I think some of it is just very technical. So some of it is thinking through how we break it down and make it more accessible. But when you look at that data and that information, you start to see that we do actually have a few local solutions. One is, I think, around energy efficiency. So we actually have a surplus in terms of installed energy. So it's bridging those gaps in terms of ensuring efficiency. I think last I checked, we lose about 22%. The question is, how then do we get a voice in order to be able to demand for that efficiency? What does that look like? So I think a little bit of work also for people who work particularly in the energy sector to make that information more available. Another, I think there's a solution in our current Energy Act. One of the challenges when it comes to these issues of decision energy, I think, is because for a very long time it's something that happened at a national level in very small rooms with very few technical people, even though these are things that affect everyone. Now, under the current Energy Act, this is devolved, because each and every county now has the mandate to prepare a county energy plan that feeds into an integrated national energy plan. I think the beauty of that is then it gives people in Lamu some leeway to say, given where we're situated and the resources available, one, what do we want and represents what is safe for the environment and not harmful to it. And then those should be the priorities if anyone is thinking of investing in energy projects here. The challenge with that, of course, is it's not something that has been done historically. So there's a lot of capacity building that needs to be done there. One, for county officials, and two, I think it comes back to always ensuring that people also understand how they can feed into and how they can contribute to those processes. So I think that's the other thing, because I think when we do that kind of mapping, we'll find out that we do have really high potential for green energy. And then that will also help us in terms of analyzing cost benefit, whether we really do need to invest in fossil fuels. I think that those would be some of my solutions. Yeah, so one, just doing a little bit more in terms of the planning. Two, trying to fix the gaps in terms of leakage, and three, working collaboratively. So those from lawyers to technical people and those who work in the energy sector, to try and make it more understandable what goes into energy decision making. Thanks.
Thank you. And perhaps I'll just throw it to the entire panel. Is there any other solution in financing or education or policy that we have not highlighted?
Yeah, I think I'd add on the solution. I think someone else can also maybe expand on the finance. So if we look at the long term, it would be cheaper to use things like solar panels as opposed to coal. So this coal is something we keep buying or purchasing. But if we do a one-time investment on solar panels, for example, in the long run, it will be cheaper. Yeah, that's what I believe. Yes, and also Raya here gave examples of the wind and the sea. Plus, we're talking about Lamu. The sea is right there, and it's very much accessible, and we have the waves which can actually drive veins and produce this energy. So already we have a solution that have just not been put into place, maybe because of the finances. Yeah? Yeah, and at least we've been able to prevent the destruction through coal and death of people and all these other things. Yes.
Thank you very much. And last but not the least, how do we amplify the voices of people in these global conventions such as COP or national platforms? Perhaps Hussein, would you like to shed some light on this?
Again, I think that's a very critical question, and amplifying voices is the first. One person has asked a question how we could get people to come to document what they're doing. From a journalism perspective, quick things will be first to look for people who are interested in that topic. For us, as a telling environmental stories, that's why it was easy for the guys to interest me in this kind of a story. So first reach out to people. Don't go for political reporters. Don't go for interested in what you're doing. They might be able to give coverage and be able to create a story for the movement that you're doing. So for me, the question on amplifying voices, obviously in terms of who you're working with, also work on the media. They like people with very great sound bites. When I say sound bites, it's people who are speak a lot, but eventually we also look for people with facts. For good data, if you give people good facts, it's easier for the person to walk with you the whole journey. So in terms of amplify voices, look for the right characters, look for the right journalist to tell your story, and also look for the right space. My biggest point to end this will be, we are all living in a world where in the palm of our hands we have the biggest weapon. Use social media. The Decolonized group really use social media in terms of campaigning. Use social media for your campaign. Read, have a daily diary. Like day one, you just document yourself. Here in Sharm el-Sheikh, you just document your journey yourself if the media is not doing it. And trust me, they will pick it up.
Wonderful, thank you so much. And that brings us to the end of our panel discussion. Please join me in thanking our panelists for the wonderful inputs. Thank you so much. So, I hope that none of you is in a rush, although we are all in a Friday feeling. We have some cocktails and refreshments outside. And on your way out, if you have not yet registered or picked a t-shirt, please do so. Thank you very much. And I have been your host, Ashley Katisia. And thank you to our panelists. We will now exit the stage. Thank you.
So we actually got the funding to go there from one of the guys in this hall, and they took us there. We told the story in a different way. And interestingly, the story that we did won the best story of the year and Journalist Award of the Year. We got through the core story from people of Lamu. So it shows you how people are painted with big strokes of brushes, that this place is not how it seems, from the government to the local chiefs. But the moment we gave space to the people involved, the moment we did our research, the moment we partnered with the people on the ground, and that's why I insist on partnerships, when I say partnership, is definitely the local civil societies. They have their own interest. Media, we have our own interest. But the moment we come together and try and see a win-win situation for everyone, and that's what we did, because we saw this is a story that needs to be told. That's the space for me, for the space of partnership, the space of giving the voices to the people or the victims, and also trying and avoid disinformation, malinformation, and the fake news that was going around at that time. Yeah.
Thank you very much. And now I would like to open the floor to our audience. Do we have any questions for our able panelists? Yes.
Thank you so much. My name is Teresia Gitau. I am a radio news presenter at Radio Maria Kenya, Nairobi, and I have two questions. And the first one is, it is evident that from the documentary, during public participation and even during the civic education, there is information that is missing. So my question is, and this one would go to Madam Hussein. No, sorry. Sorry. I'm trying to remember your name. I've forgotten. The lady who's in charge of Save Lamu. Raya, sorry. Yes. So what are you doing with the faith community to learn more about the policy making, so that at least, because we understand in the country we affiliate with a certain faith, right? So it means that the faith community has more power when they join with the CSOs to create awareness. So what are you doing to learn the policy-making process in the country so that you can trickle that information? And then the second question is to the civil societies. That is, I know there are some civil societies that are accredited to the United Nations, and I am wondering how they are also working with you guys to pass down the information, and especially on the post-2020 global biodiversity framework. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other question?
Hi, my name is Gitahi Geduku. I am a human rights defender and commendable job to decolonize. Well done. I have three interacting questions. One, issues of safety for human rights defenders came up several times. Can we be assured and reassured on what is being done and what can be done so that those human rights defenders can continue working in safe environment? Two, the communities in Lamu and Moi must be cognizant that other communities in Kenya are facing challenges, and I can give an example of Loyangalani, where we have the Lake Turkana wind power, and the community have the same challenges. How do we connect those voices so that we have a larger popular stand on renewable energy and the rights of communities? Maybe just thinking around the same lens, what the future of this movement or campaign, Decolonize, is multinational conversation. The way you are saying investors, the way you say other countries in Africa. How do we see these movements coming together, learning from Ramu and Moi? Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any questions? Yes.
Hello. Hi. My question goes to the entire panel. Okay, first of all, the presentations made it clear that coal is an evident issue, like in the entire world, and we say that it should not be implemented. We've highlighted a problem, and we've said that it should not be there. However, we've not brought about a solution, because, okay, why would we need a power plant? Basically, because we have a need for energy. We've stopped coal mining and production of power from coal, but however, we've not solved the issue of needing power. Okay, we're talking about clean energy. So these would need to be addressed in three ways. we need politics, finance, and education. So first of all, we've dwelt much on politics, like on policies put in place to enforce environmental regulations, but we've not mentioned anything on education, and we've not mentioned anything on finance. To have a project such as, let's say, a nuclear power plant, we need financing, like external financing, and also we need education. You can't have a power plant in Africa or in Kenya if our universities don't have curriculums to teach nuclear physics or something related to that. We can't have clean tech if our engineering programs are not as advanced to cover that. So how do we plan to address this? We've highlighted the problem, but what solution are we advising instead of this? Because if we don't give an alternative, then if you fail to learn from history, it will repeat itself. What's the solution you propose?
Thank you very much. Yes, the gentleman over there. And we'll take 2 more questions. I hope our panelists are preparing their answers.
Okay, my name is Bernard Kioko Ndaka. I am the founder of Green Economy for Kenya, and I am part of the team that is planning a march from Kenya to Egypt, Sharm el-Sheikh, to attend the COP27. So my question goes to the lawyer. It is okay, you did the movement and your voices were heard in Kenya. So how can we do the same so that our voices can be heard in the international community, like the Conference of Parties, COP27, and the Convention for Biological Diversity that will be happening in Canada in December? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm just curious, how are you getting to Egypt?
Okay, so the walk, we are planning to walk from Kenya to Uganda, then Sudan, South Sudan, then Egypt.
Oh, that's very impressive.
So we are planning to do it in 52 days. So it will not just happen in 7 days or like 10 days. So we will be moving in bits, 1 day at a time. Then at the end of it all, we will be at Sharm el-Sheikh. Thank you.
Okay, great. That's very impressive. Right, so perhaps we can start with Madam Raya. The question was to do with civil society organizations and how they play a role in education and also how they participate in global litigation regarding environment like the Convention on Biodiversity.
Okay, sasa sisi kama wananchi kule mashinani, jambo kubwa ambalo huwa tunafanya, kwanza tuko na bahati kama kule Lamu, 80% ya watu wa Lamu ni Waislamu. Na kwenye Uislamu ndani ya kitabu chetu ambacho ni Qur'an, ni mambo ambayo yamezungumziwa sana, mambo ya mazingira. Namna gani unahifadhi mazingira, namna gani utaishi na wanyama, namna gani utahifadhi bahari yako, wanyama wako na kila kitu. Kwa hivyo hiyo ni silaha moja ambayo sisi tuko nayo kama watu wa Lamu. Tukitetea mazingira, tunatetea pia dini yetu, kwa sababu inatuambia tutetee mazingira. Kwa sababu mazingira ukiyahifadhi ndio maisha yako yatakuwa mazuri. Na sisi kama wanawake kule Lamu tukaamua kuingilia mambo ya mazingira, kwa sababu tumeona mazingira yakiharibiwa mama huwa anaathirika. Kama kuna baa la njaa, sisi kama kule Lamu si wavuvi wanawake wala hatulimi, lakini mabwana zetu wanaenda baharini, wanatuletea samaki, wanauza samaki, tunapata pesa, tunaangalia watoto. Wanalima mashamba, wanauza mazao, wanatuletea pesa, tunaangalia watoto. So kama kuna baa la njaa, ni kumaanisha nyumbani pesa haziji. Kama kuna a prolonged drought, ni kumaanisha maji itakuwa hakuna. Kama maji hakuna, inamaanisha mimi kama mama lazima niamke asubuhi mapema, niende mbali kuchota maji kisimani ama mtoni. Kwa hivyo hizi ni moja katika harakati ambazo zimetufanya hata sisi kama kina mama kuingilia mambo ya mazingira kwa sababu ya zile athari. Kwa hivyo tunashirikiana na mashirika tofauti tukipata hizi elimu, mashirika ambayo ni ya local, mengine ni ya Lamu, Nairobi, mengine hata ni ya nchi za nje, ndio tunapata hizi fursa ya kusafiri sisi kama wenyeji wa Lamu kwenda kujionea sehemu ambazo miradi hii ni mibaya imefanywa na kuja kuelezea wenzetu zile athari ambazo zinapatikana kule. Kwa hivyo partnership na collaboration sisi kule Lamu tunafanya sana, kwa sababu bado miradi haijatekelezwa, lakini kuna wenzetu ambao tayari imeshatekelezwa na kuna athari nyingi kule wamepata.
Asante. Then Daniel, there was a question about human rights defenders and ensuring their safety.
Thank you very much. What I would like to say on this question is that one of the major things that we have done in the community is to establish community structures. And in these community structures, we have the human rights defenders inside. And we have trained the community on security and surveillance. But we have tried to link with other organizations locally and internationally that also they provide for human rights defenders. One is we have gotten skills, but also the skills needs to be continued and built, because always we have, we say security issues are dynamic, they are not static. Therefore, that one we have done also. I would like also to answer on the expanding of the campaign, because like now, if you now go in our media, you can see that we were talking about Moi, we were also talking about Lamu, but today we are also having another agenda for Machakos, whereby they want to build a 21 megawatt coal plant. This means government is planning ahead of us. What we are doing is we try to follow, and by so use of the environmental parameters, we now think, and in our strategy we have put that we have to expand the campaign beyond Kitui and beyond the Lamu, whereby if you look at the environmental impact assessment that was done in Lamu, the spread of the impact, that is negative impact, was to hit Garissa County and Kitui. This shows that we have no established zone, which we can say it's a buffer zone for coal. The spread of coal impact is immense. So we have to expand the campaign very far beyond where we have the projects or we have the proposed projects areas. So that is what we are doing, and we have, as decolonized, done a strategy. One thing is a challenge which came was when the winning of the coal case in Lamu. That showed as if that coal agenda is already stopped. But also the case in Lamu is already appealed. We have also Machakos, which was not touched by the case. We have also Kwale, Taveta, which was not touched by the case. And also in Kitui County, there was a leeway in the ruling that it provided if an environmental impact assessment can be done in a participatory and inclusive manner, then it gives way, a leeway to investor and also the Attorney General to do coal mining. So we have a danger and a big danger. And now
Lamu, and also Executive Director of Lamu Women Alliance. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Hussein Mohammed. I'm a practicing journalist and also the executive producer at Digital Communication. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Daniel, perhaps we can start with you. What are the hindrances facing Kenya and Africa at large in realizing a fossil-free and a country that runs on renewable energy?
One thing that comes to my mind when I look at Africa and where I sit in Kenya is the kind of people that we are. And in fact, one thing that is serious in Africa is poverty. This has seriously affected our campaigns, wherever we are doing it, because we really lack resources. And for sure, either the miners or the governments, they have a lot of resources. So that one has already made us not to make our campaign very successful. The other thing is the poor legislations that we have in Africa. Starting with Kenya, we know how far we have started and how far we have gone. But we are very careless in making law real. We don't domesticate what the law provides. Two, we want to jump the processes as they are set in the law. The third thing is corruption. If you look at the level of corruption in African states, you see that we are not transparent. We don't want to encourage citizens or the people from other walks of the world to understand how we are operating. We as Africa also, we tried to have Africa mining vision, but we are failed to domesticate it just because of the hardness of the hearts of the heads of the state in Africa. So these have already contributed towards making the processes of stopping coal mining or fossil fuel not to stop it. So thank you. That's what I have to say.
Thank you very much, Daniel. And you mentioned something about legislation. So I'd like to ask Mark. Mark, what can we do as the legal sector in order to achieve a just transition for Africa?
I think that's a good question. I think one thing is what Moti has mentioned. One is I think our laws could be better. There's also an issue with implementation, and I think it came through in the documentary. And a central aspect of this, again, is public participation. So even before we start thinking about legislating afresh, I think it's looking at the existing legislation and really centering people at the heart of all of it. One of the issues I think that came out, for example, in the court decision was, how is it that someone decided that the best place for a coal plant was Lamu? So it's an issue of decision making and making it participatory and doing it as early as possible in the processes rather than waiting till much later when agreements are signed, investments have been pulled together, and it's at that stage that very hurriedly you want to try and make a show of consulting with communities. So I think that's the first. I think the second, in terms of making energy transition a reality, is actually concretizing what our plans are. It's not until, I think, this year that we've seen the Ministry of Energy put together some kind of roadmap that tries to concretize the resources that we have, and Kenya is blessed because we have vast renewable energy resources. But it's not enough to have those resources. There needs to be very concrete plans that look far ahead into the future in terms of how those resources are going to be utilized. So we need that, because when you look at our current energy policy, you won't find the term just energy transition, but you will still find references to coal. So how can we say we're serious about meeting some of these commitments if we don't have concrete plans for it? And it's something that reflects, I think, the will of the people, certainly people in places like Lamu. I think it's something that gives increasing confidence to investors. So I think that's the other aspect that would be crucial. And then lastly, I think where we do have reference to coal in our legislation, in our policies, we really need to think very seriously about what that value is. Because one thing that comes out very strongly, and right at the beginning of the documentary, we saw Mpumalanga. You can't really say for the people who used to live there, for who those lands provided livelihood, that is development. So, we have current policies and legislation that still make reference to coal. So it's also thinking about seriously whether that's value for money and what's really good for people. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And perhaps we can shoot the same question to Esther. From an academic perspective and as a young person, how do we achieve a just transition?
Being in school definitely creates awareness. And I'd say, I think most people in authority tend to believe that they can manipulate these other people. Like as we saw in the documentary, one man said that it was for the benefit of very few, but really affected, and this was going to destroy a large number of people. So I think education can really create awareness to prevent, to decolonize, yeah. And yeah, I think that's it for now.
Thank you very much. And perhaps Hussein, how can we continue to effectively mount a challenge against arguments for coal given the current landscape? We know that there's a lot of pro-coal information going out there, a lot of arguments for coal, and there's also a lot of misinformation on the media. How do we effectively mount a argument against this kind of ongoing and movement?
Yeah, thank you, Ashley. I think for me, two quick things that come to my mind is, one is to provide our audiences with context, and to try in the complexity of this all coal thing, just to give the voices of the people. If you saw the documentary, we had more of the voices of the people. That way, people can tend to understand from a human perspective side. The other thing is working together with the non-governmental organizations, working together with the decolonized movement, Save Lamu, the guys on the ground. I think for me, those were the key things that really help in terms of deconstructing all this, so as the people out there to have a better understanding of what really is the issue about coal. Because on one side, the government will come with its own issue, the people will have their own issue. But for a journalist or for someone, or a filmmaker or a producer, the best thing for you is to, in the midst of all this, try and tell the people's story, because the people's story will give a face to all this. As you can see at the end of the documentary, we have the likes of Walid, we have the likes of people in Kitui. They're giving a face. By the time everyone leaves this room, they will remember, oh, Cole, I remember so and so. So that, for me, is the best way in terms of narrative storytelling.
Thank you very much. And Raya, as a member of the civil society, what is the most important element of an effective campaign against fossil fuels?
Can I speak in Kiswahili?
Yes, you can speak in Kiswahili.
Because I represent, apart from being an environment activist, I'm also a gender activist. And I represent women back in my village. So ningependa hata wao wasikie vile ninazungumza. So come again, what is the question?
The question is, as a member of the civil society organization, what is the most important element of a fossil fuel campaign?
Naweza sema kitu muhimu kwanza kwa mradi wowote ambao unapelekwa kule mashinani muhimu ni wale watu ambao wanaishi kule kufahamu. Lazima hata wao, kwa sababu sisi mwaka 2010 tulibadilisha katiba, tukapeana mamlaka mingi kwa mwananchi ya kuwa jambo lolote ambalo linafanywa na serikali lazima yeye ashirikishwe. Kwa hivyo kwanza ni kushirikishwa, ndio yeye atoe maoni yake, moja. Pili pia, kwa sababu tunataka maendeleo, haimaanishi ni maendeleo ambayo yatapelekwa, wengine watadhulumiwa, wengine watafariki au wengine wataathirika. Kama mradi wa coal, ile habari ambayo tulikuwa tumepata, serikali kutengeneza nguvu za umeme kuna njia tofauti tofauti. Wanaweza kutumia jua, wanaweza kutumia nguvu ya bahari, wanaweza kutumia upepo, lakini kibiashara ukitumia coal unapata faida nyingi kushinda ukitumia jua. So hata hivyo kufanya mradi ambao utaumiza wale ambao wanaishi kule kwa sababu wewe upate faida, hilo ni jambo moja pia watu wanafaa kufahamu, na serikali itie maanani ya kuwa wananchi wanataka miradi, lakini huwezi sacrifice wananchi wako kwa sababu wewe utapata faida na wao wateseke. Asante.
Thank you very much. Asante sana. And Mark, perhaps you can shed some more light on what lessons can we learn from countries that use coal vis-a-vis countries that are running on renewable energy.
So I think there's a couple of things to say. One is that even the largest countries that relied on coal, like China, are slowly shifting away from it. Part of that is because the economics don't make sense. If you leave aside the arguments around the environment and the devastating impacts on people and the cost that comes back and places on government, renewable energy is becoming far cheaper. A really good, I think, example of this lesson is when the coal plant was being touted as, you know, what was going to be the engine of Vision 2030. The African Development Bank took the position that, you know, the Western countries had developed on the back of coal. There's no reason why Africa shouldn't. Fast forward to today, and they will not give a guarantee for coal-fired powered projects, which means, you know, if we invest in these projects, the risk increasingly as time goes by, and more investors pull out, and these assets become stranded. So you're left with these expensive investments that are no longer useful, and ultimately it costs all of us. It's not just an issue for Moti in Mui Basin or Raya down in Lamu. It's actually something that costs all of us, and the cost of electricity is something whose weight we all feel. So I think the lesson is to read the signs. Globally there's a shift, and to try and take advantage that where we live, we don't have cold biting winters. So if we set up solar power plants, and it's not to say that that's the panacea, they have their issues, and we must ensure that even those projects are just, but at least we have those as options for us. And you know, if you look at even some of the economics around the jobs that are created, you have more opportunities for localized jobs as opposed to some of these very complex technical projects, which we don't have a history of developing in our country. So I think the lesson is more countries are divesting from coal, investors are looking away from them, and it's risky. I think between 2015 and 2020, I think there's a statistic I saw which was interesting. It says, I think 80% of coal power projects that were initiated didn't close. They weren't finished. You know, someone was saying you don't want to get carried away by what environmentalists are telling you, but had that not happened, had the tribunal not been carried away by the powerful arguments of Raya and other activists, then today we'd be struggling with a coal plant that we don't need. We have excess energy. So I'd say the lesson is to focus and read the signs and invest more in the natural resources that we have and see how we can use those to develop and take our country forward. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And perhaps Hussein, when we talk about transparency and accountability when it comes to fossil fuel transitions, what role can the media play in this?
I mean, as you spoke earlier, definitely check on things like misinformation, disinformation. I'll give an example of when this all started. Back then I was working for KTN News, and when I told my bosses I'm going to do a story in Lamu to cover coal, it was not a big thing. No one was giving much attention for it, because what has been put out there is that this is a government project, people should embrace it. But from our sources down on the ground, they were telling us things are not.
Good evening. Welcome to the launch of the Decolonize documentary. I welcome all of you, and thank you so much for joining us today. First, I'll begin by introducing myself. My name is Ashley Kitisia. I am the fossil-free campaigner with Laudato Si movement. I hope you're all comfortable. I would like to inform you that the washrooms are outside, the door on your right. There is a ladies and a gents. So should you need to go outside, that is how you will find the rooms. I would also like to ask you to put your phones on silent, especially as we get to the beginning of the screening. There shall be no filming while we are screening the documentary, and please do not remove your shoes. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Doreen Onyango from the Decolonize movement. Doreen.
All right, everybody, I'd like to welcome you. Thank you, Ashley, for the introduction. I see that we have crowd enough to begin. I'd like to introduce you all, introduce myself and also welcome you all to the first ever documentary launch by Decolonize in an external environment. We are very grateful to have you here, and I'd just like to give you a little brief about Decolonize. So Decolonize is this movement that was started by a group of passionate people who are passionate not only about the environment, but about the future generations. And this was spurred by the whole fiasco behind coal in Kenya, both the extraction of coal and the processing of coal in Lamu. So we have our teams from Kitui and from Lamu who will be here to discuss more about what actually happens on the ground in regards to policy, advocacy, litigation, and the successes that Decolonize has made to date. And this will all happen after the documentary, which shall be screened right after I speak. But for now, I'd just like to welcome you all. And for any questions that you might have, please reserve them, because we shall have a panel discussion that will feature all the arms of Decolonize, which is litigation, advocacy and lobbying, communications, communities, and policy, of course. So karibuni sana, feel free, and may you enjoy the film. Thank you.
Yeah. Kwa majina naitwa Sobe Msomo, mi ni chairman wa Save Lamu, vile vile mi ni chairman wa Indian Ocean BMU Network na ni mkaaji wa Lamu. Leo tumekuja Nairobi kushirikiana na wenzetu partnership ambao tunafanya kazi na wao ili kuhakikisha mazingira ya Lamu yako sawa pamoja na Kitui. Na leo tumeangalia filemu ambao ilikuwa ikiongea sana mambo ile athari na yale ambayo itakoziwa na hii mradi wa coal. Na sisi kama Save Lamu hatupingi mradi wa coal, hatupingi maendeleo, lakini tunapiga coal kwa sababu coal ina sumu na itaharibu mazingira, na sisi tunategemea mazingira kwa kupata mapato yetu ya kila siku. Kwa hivyo tumefurahia sana kuona sura za watu wa Lamu ziko hapo zikielezea vile hofu ambao wako nao ili watapata kwa mradi, kwa sababu tumeweza kusikia kwamba nchi nyingi ambao zimeendelea wao wameweza kufunga hii miradi ya coal, lakini ajabu ni kwamba hasa Lamu na siku nyingi ilikuwa imesauliwa na serikali, hakuna miradi, hakuna viwanda. Leo ndio mwanzo kutuletea mradi wa coal. Kwa hivyo sisi kama watu wa Lamu tuliweza kupinga mradi kama huu na tutaendelea kupinga mradi kama huu, na hii filemu ambayo tumeona leo pia tutachukua pia tuende kule mashinani pia ili tuweze kuonesha jamii ili kuangalia ile athari ya coal ambayo itatuharibia mazingira yetu.
Kwa jina naitwa Alan Zumoka Mulatia kutoka upande wa Kitui, na mimi ninaelimisha watu katika eneo la Kitui kuhusu mambo ya vile tunaweza kuwa na tunaweza kataa mambo ya uchimbaji wa coal, kwa sababu coal kulingana na vile leo nimejua na hii warsha ilikuwa leo, coal iko na madhara mingi sana, na serikali haipaswi kuongeza pesa zake kuweka katika mradi wa coal, kwa sababu tunaweza kuongeza pesa katika mradi wa kama tuweke mambo ya sola. Sola inaweza kupatiana umeme mwingi na tunaweza kufanya maendeleo na huo umeme. Kwa hivyo warsha leo imenifungua macho kana kwamba coal si jambo mzuri ya serikali kuongeza pesa ili iweze kusema ati inatupatia umeme. Ule umeme tuko nao kwa wakati huu ni mwingi na hautumiki ukaisha. Sioni maana ya serikali kuongeza pesa katika mradi huu wa coal ikisema ati kuna faida kwa mwananchi. Hakuna faida, ni madhara tu. Kwa hivyo warsha leo imenifungua, na nikienda huko mashinani nitaenda kufungua wenzangu kuelezea kana kwamba coal iko na madhara mingi sana, na ni vizuri tuambie serikali iongeze pesa katika ule umeme ambao hauleti madhara katika mwananchi. Kwa hivyo coal iko na madhara mingi kwa sababu inaweza enda na uhai wa mwanadamu, na sio vizuri serikali kuongeza pesa mahali inajua inaenda kuangamiza mwananchi wa kawaida. Kwa hivyo ni vizuri serikali ijue mradi huu wa coal sio mradi mzuri, iwe na mradi mwingine badala wa kuongeza pesa na uweze kusaidia mwananchi. Kwa hivyo serikali naihimiza na ile idara inahusika na mambo ya uchimbaji wa mawe ijua kana kwamba huu mradi haufai kamwe kwa mwananchi, ni madhara tu.